Hey everyone, I've been looking forward to having this conversation with Jonathan for quite some time now. And this is because I think 2021 is going to be better than 2020. I don't think that is a stretch for anyone. I actually think we're going to probably see a GDP print for 2021 that is something we haven't seen in a long time. Call it 4-5% for the country. I have faith and belief that the consumer is going to just unleash themselves for being essentially locked down for 9, 10, 12 months. And generally speaking, that's going to be good for the country. We're going to see real unemployment go down instead of people rolling off unemployment like they are today. So, Jonathan, what's an investor to do to get ready for what I think is going to be some exciting and different times in 2021?
Well, listen, I think we do have to just make the caveat that this is contingent on these vaccines that seem to be promising,
Very
really,
true.
really working, and people taking them, right? I think there's a
That's a
lot
good
of
point.
look. We had a whole like anti-vaccine thing before coronavirus that was going on, and we also have the conspiracy theorists out there who think that the vaccines are going to contain microchips to control your
For,
consumption of potato chips or whatever it is. uh you know
yeah.
and so there is, I was hearing yesterday that it's going to take uh about 80% vaccination rate to really kick coronavirus's butt once and for good.
Okay.
So hopefully we can get there, and it looks like they're all going to require 2 doses.
Yep. I saw
So
that too.
so people are going to have to get vaccinated and go back a month later and get vaccinated again to make sure that they really get covered. So assuming all that happens, this is not going to happen until probably the halfway point in the year.
True.
But I do think I agree with you. If we get to the point uh, where we really do have effective vaccines, people are getting vaccinated, we're not having weird side effects that people haven't foreseen from them. It's all going forward. I think there will be a huge collective sigh of relief, and people will run out and start spending money again.
Mm-hmm.
So to get ready for that, there are, so let me sort of break this down into a couple of different buckets as to what I think. I think that, as much as I've been waiting for correction in the multifamily space, I think that if that scenario plays out, it will postpone the correction for some time, because I think that what'll happen, there's been a lot of money waiting on the sidelines. There's also been a lot of deals that have not come to market, right? The deal volume has dropped off the table
Yeah.
in multifamily because so many sellers have been holding off, who want to sell, who want to capture their gains, but they've been holding off because of the uncertainty in the market right now, and they don't think that they can get the pricing they want. Also, what's happening with the lenders is the lenders are really looking at, they used to look at T3 or T6 to determine your whether they're going to lend to you. Now they're looking at a T1. They're looking very, very stringently at your collections and your bad debt, and they're really there's just a lot of stuff that isn't financeable
Yeah.
because because the collections have been screwy because of coronavirus, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of sellers are holding their properties off the market, to waiting for better times when things are more financeable. And what's going to happen if I think, come say June of next year, if we are seeing the real effects of vaccinations and it's working and people are going back to normal life again, I think you're going to see a lot of property coming to the market. It actually could have a little depressing effect on prices, which would be good.
Mm-hmm.
A little moderation just with the amount of supply coming on.
Sure.
And but I think it's going to be full steam ahead for a while. It's going to power the market forward. So I don't think we're going to get a lot of relief from cap rates. So for the standard kind of multifamily, I think, look, if you're committed to investing, it's really still the same news. Like, we're still going to be peak pricing, which means you're on a knife's edge in terms of your prospects for the deal. You've got to be very careful. You've got to really diligence the hell out of the deals. You've got to really look at them from the downside safety perspective. Don't be thinking about getting rich, thinking about capital preservation. All of those things that we've talked about before, I think, are still going to hold.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the other hand, I think there may be some very interesting opportunities, and there's going to be a very short window for this. But in certain markets, like New York City, like Las Vegas, like Orlando, uh, places that are heavily dependent on tourism in
Mhm.
particular, and travel and business travel and conventions and all those kinds of things, there are going to be property owners who are not going to make it to June, right?
Correct.
They are not going to make it to June. Even though they know the good times are coming and they're going to be trying to hold out, there are just going to be people who are throwing in the towel because they can't pay for this out of pocket
Yeah, they're
anymore.
just done.
Yeah. And they just may not be able to afford it, or they may be getting foreclosed on
Mhm.
or what have you. Right. So uh, there are going to be some opportunities to buy right before the return to normal
Mhm.
at good pricing. I think particularly for smaller assets, I think it's going to be harder to find those deals for bigger assets because the connected inside players are going to be able to snap
Yeah,
those things up
I
like
agree.
directly from the banks. Like the special services are going to call them up directly and say, here,
Yeah, it'll
take
be
this.
it'll be two phone calls, and that asset will be gone.
Yeah, but for the smaller stuff,
Mhm.
you may be able to find some good opportunities. But here's the caveat to this. This is all very speculative. It's all assuming that this is all going to work. So you have to be prepared uh, for the pain of coronavirus to continue for another year, I'd say.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
because don't go all in
Oh, for sure.
on
Yeah.
this on some assets because Jonathan Twombly and Mike Zuber said, go buy stuff.
For sure.
Like we're talking about like really like the best case scenario here of where the vaccines
Sure.
work, right? But it may not turn out that way, right? So there's always that, like, and obviously the best opportunities come when there's distress out there, and
For sure.
distress happens when there's uncertainty and you can't see the future, and most people are afraid to act. And there's a reason for that because it may continue, right? So if you start seeing these bargains come up, I want you to just like, yeah, jump if you have the opportunity, but also don't be rosy about your predictions about where this is going to go. You may have to endure some pain for a while before, when it comes back. I mean, boy, you're going to be happy that you bought it,
Yeah.
but there may be, 6 months to a year before that
For
where you're
sure.
going, this is a bad deal. I wish I hadn't bought this thing. So just be ready for that. Make sure you've got cash reserved,
Mhm.
that you're building into your model, you know, like be prepared for the worst, but forge ahead with those bargains if you can find them.
It's interesting you brought up a couple of things in that kind of review, and I've actually just started telling people this as well. Again, I'm single family or residential. Is I do expect supply to pick up, right? You talked about people holding
Yeah.
on and not pricing stuff because of collections and financing. In the residential space, for me, it's the move up buyers. And it's funny you brought up Orlando. I just did research on Orlando. We'll talk about Orlando first. One of the things that real estate agents in Orlando are talking about is one of their business or one of their consistent trends is, hey, people from the north, they move to Florida when they're 65. They buy a house because it's cheaper, right? 300 grand is their average price today. They live in it for 20 years. And then as they get to their 80s, they generally sell that house and move into assisted living or elder care or whatever that word is. That market dried up in 2020. They're staying longer, right? What used to be a consistent flow of opportunities isn't happening. So what they're anticipating is, will that unlock in 2021 and we'll have more folks, or do they stay frozen again and it's not till 2022? So that unlocking of, for me in my market, it's the move up buyer,
Right.
right? The move up buyer has a job. They've been there 10 years. Instead of moving up, which they usually do, they're going to Home Depot and Lowe's and buying paint. They're like, hey, we're going to paint the kids' rooms. So does the move up buyer in Fresno, California return? I think they do. Does elder care change in 2021? I don't know. The story's been pretty bad about, coronavirus is going nuts inside
Yeah.
nursing homes. So I don't know. It's
I mean, this is
interesting.
the thing. I'm glad you brought up this point because, you know, the the factor here that nobody can really predict yet is, even when let's just say a vaccine comes out, it's effective, it's people take it, and there's no side effects.
Yeah.
Let's just say it's like
The rosy picture.
we get some miracle drugs, and it sounds like, I mean, some of the stuff that they're doing sounds pretty incredible, right? I mean, this has been
Agreed.
some big scientific breakthroughs that have happened as a result of coronavirus. So, so let's say that happens. We still can't account for the residual fear
Yeah,
and the
exactly.
change of habits, right, that have happened. Right now, I don't, for people who, there's some people who are like, coronavirus is a hoax, and they're going out and they're still living their life the way they were. Okay, those people, put them aside. For other people, there is some opposite extreme to those
Yeah.
people who are going to still not trust
Yeah.
anything. They're not going to trust going to restaurants. They're not going to trust going to nursing homes, like
Exactly.
you said, And so what is the long-term effect of that, right?
Yep.
What, how long does it take us to really get back to normal, where people just go, where 100% of the people are
Yeah.
back to normal,
Just
as
living
opposed
life.
to
Yep.
like 65% of the population.
Yep.
So I think that I was even thinking about this myself, like, I'm not eager to jump on a plane right now with like a bunch of people who,
Yeah.
I don't know what their habits are like.
Yeah.
And even after there's a vaccine, and I'm assuming that once there's a vaccine, that the airlines are basically going to make you provide proof
I would
that you've
assume
been
so.
vaccinated to get on the plane. Even if that's the case, right? Like, am I really going to be that eager to jump on a plane? I've gotten used to not traveling. Like,
Yeah.
what?
I agree.
Like, why do I want to do that? Like, I don't feel like it, or, so I think it's going to take a while for us to really get back to 100% normal, even with effective vaccines that are, widely available.
Yeah, I think this is the big thing I'm thinking about, is the change of behavior. Because again, I've been following consumer for 20 years. It's a big part of the channel. And for me, what does that, for me, it's the move up buyer. It really fell off a cliff in my market, right? We're still having first time home buyers. That market is dominant and probably the hottest I've ever seen, right? You have people moving to Fresno, they're leaving San Francisco. You have the millennials, which we've talked about a couple of times. First time home buyer, never hotter. It's the people that have been in their home 10 to 12 years that traditionally trade up. It's just not happening.
Well, we talked about that last time too, didn't we? Because the market has been gummed up for a while, actually, because people are finding it. They get into the starter home, but then they can't move up because it's so expensive, right? And also just so difficult. It's not just, I think the expense is only part of it. I think there's also that the market has changed so that it used to not be that hard to like sell your house and buy a new house and do a double closing, and like people did it. Now it's like, well, I could sell my house quickly, but I might not be able to find something to live in.
I'll be homeless.
Even if I can afford it. And what am I going to do? Do I have to then go rent for 6 months, and then I've got to move 2 times? And then then if I find a place, 6 months into my year lease, I find a place, and now the landlord still wants me to pay the rest of the year's lease. They won't let me break the lease. Like, there's all this friction involved in moving up that didn't used to exist. And, that's been gumming up the works. And I think that it's still an issue with coronavirus. And now you've pointed to some additional factors, like people not moving on to assisted living or to retirement communities, because like, well, I don't want to be around a bunch of other old people who might be make me sick. Right. So, whereas before they're like, oh, I want to be around other old people like me. Now it's like, oh, the old people are like, so
it's crazy. Well, this is a lot of fun. I always enjoy speaking with you every week. I want to say thank you. And again, we'll talk to you next week.
Yep. Looking forward to it as always, Michael. So have a great week.
You too, man.